yeah,
That's
they're kind of
fun.
specifically set up, but just hoping they're okay with this interface.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Where are you located?
I'm in Glastonbury in the UK, in Avalon.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. You live up there.
yeah, in the middle of town, right in the middle of it all.
Wow, that's really cool. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the show. Let's see. We don't have anyone in here yet. Let me make sure it's even working. Oh yeah, they're coming. Let's see. You're not on Facebook, right? Or are you?
I am on Facebook, but I don't go on there very much.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know if I could tag you on it, but is it oh, Ellen Elena. Okay. So you go by Ellen Elena.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find you. Glastonbury. Wow. And how long have you lived there?
I think I've been here on and off for 10 years. Yeah, with travels in between, but
That's exciting. Did you get called there? Do you feel?
yep.
Wow.
Very, very unequivocally. Um, yeah, actually from North America where I was at the time,
You're from
just
North
finishing
America.
a finishing a cycle of ceremonies. You in Arizona? Are you in Sedona?
Oh no, I'm in Arkansas. Oh, we got
Are you? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm on the crystal beds over here. I got called over here. We got called over
Oh,
here.
wow. That's somewhere I haven't been. We did a kind of circle of ceremonies around the continent, and then when I
Really?
finished at the center at Bear Butte, there was the guidance to come here and anchor the teachings,
So you're
the golden
originally
elven heart here in Avalon. So
wow. And originally, where are you from? England?
from England, born in London, and yeah, lived many years in Wales, and
Oh
then
wow.
yeah,
So how did
settled
that
here.
start for you? Were you born this weird?
How did
Did you? I mean, were you always awake, or did you have a wake up experience?
Um, I think there was certainly a big part of awakeness when I was born, and I think it went completely to sleep. I mean, well, I don't know, it went to sleep, but I vanished out of connection with that
Right, right.
for many years, all through my childhood and teens, really, until yeah, my when I was about 19, I think.
Yeah, that's the second person said they loved your book.
Oh,
Well, that's pretty common. It, when I ask people that question, of course, I'm half kidding, but most of them say I was born this way, and then I went to sleep.
yeah,
Somewhere between, you know, 8, 9, and 18, and then they came back usually through a series of traumas or a trauma,
yeah,
and they were reawoken on or about 2012. Give or take 10 years. Some people just, come on. They say, I've been awake for 3 years. I'm like, wow. I mean, it's moving so fast. Some
yeah.
people, have been doing this we've had people on here from the 60s, woke up in the 60s.
Wow.
So what happened to you? I mean, because you're relatively young. I mean, these crowds are usually what, 35 to and up. So it's great to see young people.
Yeah, well, I'm 40 last year, so
Okay, okay.
yeah, I guess I really had that first awakening experience, yeah, when I was about 19.
Mm,
And for me, it was always very much the earth calling, speaking, just remembering
really?
her like a huge breakthrough experience to just the sense of earth as
Wow,
my whole reason for being here.
really?
And yeah, that was really the beginning. And it's I guess it's been about 20 years now, and and I think, as you say, those people who I meet who are the 60s, 70s, I mean, but their energy is so
Oh,
beautiful.
I
It's
know.
like,
It's
you
crazy.
know yeah, because they've lived as well, and it's like the integration of that light is
I
just
know. I can't. Some
yeah,
people that come on here and they're like 1987 harmonic convergence. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I was totally like drinking the wrong Kool-Aid in 1987. Uh, so your journey was that through your experience, basically Mother Earth started speaking to you, basically.
She started calling, she started breaking through, and I mean, from that very early childhood experience, probably up to 7, I remember, singing late at night in London. So it wasn't, wild. It wasn't, but the city lights and just seeing them all outside my window, the lights of London stretching out, and feeling the connection with the stars above. So it's like that city of light on the earth, the stars above, and just this sense of rapture, just and an ancient feeling. It was like no, so much sorrow and so much love, and no comprehension even in my child's body of how I felt, so much that I didn't even know, just the emotion of that ancientness. But that disappeared and I forgot even feeling that. So it was really in my that sort of 19-ish time, and I was embarking on a university degree at Oxford, studying ancient Greek and Latin, and I'd become very academic, very, very cerebral.
Wow.
And that was my family background. That's what I aspired to with all my heart and soul. It was like just to be an academic, and study really deeply and quietly these academic texts. And I was walking through the parks in Oxford one day, the beautiful meadows. It was springtime. I was with my friends, my first time at Oxford, my whole life's dream come true. I'm like in this sort of, the ivory towers, like, and this old lady, she called me over from a bench. She was sitting on a bench in the park, and I was wearing a bright yellow dress I'd borrowed from a friend. It was bright, bright yellow. She said, "I love your dress. Come and sit next to me." I went and sat next to her, and she had all these drawings laid out on her lap, and she was sketching the birds and the trees, and she was dressed all in green. She had a green hat and these deep, deep brown eyes and Eastern European accent. And I asked her, "Where do you come from?" And she said, "The past is boring."
She said that.
And she said to me, but she was just looking in my eyes, she said, "The birds and the trees, they speak to me. They're my friends." And it was like, what came through her in that moment, it was as though a veil just broke away completely. It was this sense that this mystic earth, that this other existence actually existed, and it wasn't, a romance, an unrealistic fairy tale, something unconnected to who we are in the most real sense. And I think almost overnight gave up my place at Oxford. It just shattered
Is that
everything.
right? Wow.
Yeah, but it was then a huge integration because I had no psychological founding in my being.
Of course, yeah. I mean, you would have been like, you talk about black sheep. 20 years old, 20 years. That's crazy. I have a friend from Germany, and she's one of the most powerful. I haven't talked to her in years, but she's one of the most powerful souls that I've come across. Very pure, and she was in her late 30s, and she went to London, and I think she was in Hyde Park. That's the name of it. And she was walking in Hyde Park, late 30s, had some medical problem and had overcome it, and ends up in England walking in Hyde Park. And some man, just like your story, it was an Indian man, like from the country of India,
Right.
turban, everything, right? And he called her and said, "Hey, can you come here? I want to talk to you." And they sat on a park bench. He was on a park bench. And he gave her 2 stones. And I guess in that moment, like yours, there was some soul recognition of either the person and or the information or code the person was providing. And that's how she got started. That's how she woke up, just like you.
Yeah.
So did this lady, I know in my friend's case, she felt in no uncertainty at all that this was an interdimensional being. Somebody, a guide or something that had materialized to bring her this message to wake up. It sounds like yours was very similar.
Yeah, I mean, for me, she shone like an interdimensional being. I didn't equate her to the way I'd experienced any other human being up until that moment. But years later, I went back to visit her because I had to give her thanks because
Really?
she just changed my whole life in that moment. And I gifted, actually, speaking of stones, I gifted her a crystal back from my journeys, just to say it's just the tiniest token
Wow.
of what you've opened up for me. But she was almost bemused. She was just, she was back in her humanity just in that. And then she was, telling me her story. And it was like, we were just two human beings sitting in that moment on the bench together, just with the deeper revelations of what's moving through us, the waves of remembrance. And it was an incredible moment. But whatever moved through at that time, but it was amazing to meet her again in another way as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, to be in
It's
that
it's
compassion
crazy.
at
It
that
makes you
moment.
wonder, do they even know consciously what they were doing? Have you ever had that happen? Somebody will just turn and say something to you, and you're like, and they don't even know
Yeah.
they said it. I've had that happen several times, either through messaging or face to face. Where you, I'm looking at them going, is this my higher self speaking to me through someone else, or is it the you,
Yeah.
me, we, and it speaking to me? I guess it's all the same thing anyway. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I have it happening with my partner, I find. There are moments that timing just says something in a moment. You think,
Right.
this is, yeah, just direct.
So now, so obviously you went back and found her, which is really fascinating. Did she give you like any direction when you had that initial conversation, like you're going to be a healer, or there's more
Yeah.
to life than what you thought, or was there anything major that came in, or was it just the experience
No,
itself providing
it
the
was
like?
just the experience itself. And what I saw in that moment was that I wasn't real. And that was what was so startling. It was like I saw that everything I had constructed of a self that I thought was this person who I was, sitting next to her on that bench, was completely unreal. It was like a
Right,
husk.
right,
And then when I went back to my room, I remember I had a night of just lying awake and this sense of light just pouring in, and I saw my father and my grandfather's spirit move outside the window, and I just understood that I'd taken all of their dreams, the most beautiful things I could find in the world around me, and woven them as a sense of self. And I
wow,
understood completely I'd followed their dreams, and that it didn't come from within my own source and essence and being.
wow.
But I had no idea really how to begin that other than to start following. I'd never done that. I'd been in very rigorous boarding schools, and as with most of us, there's no training of how to do
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's doesn't that I mean, this is a story. This is everybody's story right here. But
Yeah,
yeah, that whole feeling of cuz I can totally relate to that moment where you're like, okay, this isn't even real. I spent my first 2 years awake on the streets by my own choice, and
yeah,
I can remember having those moments, and I just remember, like 2 o'clock in the morning in a park, laying on a bench, going and hearing, this is not even real. I remember hearing
yeah,
that, like this, and I'm like, this isn't real. Well, what am I? Well, you're real. You know, Todd's real, but it's not just Todd. Todd's just,
yeah,
this player in a play. And then the other thing that came in was, yeah, because there was a bunch of traumas that happened to me, several of them, and then everything, broke open, and like a lot of us, I had programming running, and would and still do, but it said to me like, just understand that everything you've ever done and thought is going to be known by everybody. And I went,
yeah,
holy shit, are you serious? Because I mean, I led a pretty wild life, and I was like, and then I got it. I realized that what they were saying to me was that that's going to be the same for everybody. So, like, total telepathy, I guess would be another
yeah,
way to put it. And then when I realized everybody was going to be subjected to that, I was like, okay, I can live with that. But
yeah,
yeah, it's funny how when you get the marching orders, you're going, okay, what do I do with this now? And they're like, okay, well, you'll figure it out. I don't know
yeah,
if that's how you got
yeah,
your directions. Mine was like, you'll figure it out. We'll give you the pieces. You put them together. I'm going to go, great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the next piece was being sent over into Wales. So I don't know if you've been over here, the UK, with England and Wales. They're so different from one another. It's
Yeah.
like, in the old stories, it's like the West, so Wales and Cornwall and parts of Scotland and Ireland. Certainly, that's where the multidimensional energies of these islands, are
Yeah.
really, that's the strongholds, the places, the storage places of this vast timeline of remembrance, and all that's
Yes.
held here. It was really held in full dimensionality, across those mountains. And I'd never experienced that, but I saw a sign for a university that it was over there, and I had a feeling. So following that, and went over the hills, and my feet landed there on the ground, and I just knew 100% that
Crazy.
was the first moment of clear knowing after kind of spiraling around, black sheep,
Right.
lost, okay, I've let go of
Rainbow
the
sheep.
unreal, but
Rainbow
where's the
sheep.
real? And that was the beginning of the journey of receiving, the Elven teachings and so
Oh, we
forth
get to
that
get into
filled the
that.
veil.
Yeah, this is perfect
Yeah,
timing. There are no coincidences whatsoever. Believe me, there's not. All the Elvins and Fays and the little forest behind me are all shouting and screaming now, and I mean that. So yeah, that's fascinating too. What you were looking to discover, because I'm sure you have some interest in that. I'm a huge history buff, and I love etymology. I have since I was really started reading and understood what it was, and of course the Egyptian and Greek lineage has a lot of information for us, and then of course that whole area that we call Great Britain. I mean, that's just irrefutable. The
yeah.
the legends, the everything. I have a friend of mine who sent me a book, and I can't remember what the guy is. I don't know if he's an astrophysicist or some type of scientist. And he was on Google Earth looking at the Earth, and he got a download at the same time and put together a little book. And it's basically saying that there wasn't one ark, as in Noah's Ark. There were several arks, and that the arks were actually areas of a high altitude that survived the flood. One of those spots is of course in UK, and and I've often thought about that. Reading the history over the years, St. Patrick's role, the Irish, the Druids, and just all the stuff that's happened. But how can a small little spot in the entirety of the world have been such and has been such a powerful force?
Yeah.
That's just to me mind blowing. Look at Japan's very similar, but yeah, there's just this, and of course, many of us that are creating the vortex of this community have a strong remembrance of what we call Avalon or Camelot, or that period, to include Merlin, dragons, and everything else that goes with it. Do
Yeah.
you have a strong identity with those essences that we associate with that era?
Um, that was like the treasure hunt, like the beginnings of the treasure hunt. Those myths, those legends, those names. It was the sense of the presence of Earth herself, and also of the old stories and the Mabinogion, the old Welsh tales with these same. They mention Arthur, they mention Gwenwyvar. That's her,
Yeah,
her Welsh name, and
Gwynviar.
they spoke to me, but I could also feel that there was a frame in them that wouldn't let me through to the depth of the remembrance that I was experiencing at a pure energetic level. It was like they were clues that could also become labyrinths that I could get lost in. So without them, they were like huge keys of remembrance, and at the same time, it was almost having to listen beyond them to what was encoded invisibly behind them.
Yeah,
And of course, it's like we've been like they're like fragments of a massive tapestry,
yeah,
and so altered in their coding, but at the same time they do carry the what I would call is like the frequency of the evening star. Like in the Elven teachings, is the evening star and the morning star, and the evening star is the remembrance of the last great starlight ages of peace, our soul star remembrance on Earth, the eras that have been. And that evening star remembrance is encoded through the earth in so many time capsules of memory. Still so much to come, and certainly through those tales encoded through language. And the names, it's like the names are so, so powerful. And I kind of had to start turning off my cerebral mind because it tended to just create really
that's the
fascinating
labyrinth.
patterns.
That's the labyrinth. I
And
love when you said that, the labyrinth, because that's like the ego, right? Like
yeah,
seriously, I mean these. experiences and these downloads, even to this day. I think we're on firmer ground today, but I can't speak for people that are, let's just say on a linear time frame, 2 years awakened or something like that. But yeah, they give you these little pieces, and they're so powerful. I mean,
Yeah.
many of us have had apparitions, and of course, Avalon's played a huge role in that. I think for a lot of people, just as much as Egypt and other, Atlantis and so on. But they never give you enough. They just give you this piece and that piece,
I know.
and then the language itself, the communication itself. I know very few people who literally get verbatim word for word. I know people do, but it's weird because it's just this feeling. Or did I see that? Or did I just get that? We're talking
Yeah.
dragons, other elementals, which is, I'm really happy to hear that you're kind of plugged into that, because I've always had a, more of a natural resonance, I think, to the organic. So nature beings and of course, nature itself. And of course, the elementals, which seem to be associated with Merlin some way or another, because I've had a few visits from him. But
Yeah.
in regard to, like, how did your relationship begin with the elementals? Because I'm taking that's a real big part of your journey.
Yeah. Well, it was very much through remembering that priestess of Avalon and Avalon path, which yeah, I met an incredible healer, psychotherapist, goddess-based lady in Wales who was the second probably person who saved my life.
Mm.
Because after leaving Oxford and my family and the whole thing of this,
Oh,
I
they must
was
have thought you were crazy.
they did, and when people around you powerfully believe you're crazy,
Yeah, yeah, we've all
it
been
can
there.
it
You're
can
not.
start.
Yeah, you're among friends here. Believe me. This. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and it's and it's a remarkable thing because this field of this consciousness is just building and building in coherence. So we're able to hold it in coherence psychologically, through our whole being, all of our bodies, which is incredible and such a blessing to experience. But yeah, I was at that point, I'd gone back to the earth. I was living simply. I mean, I went to Wales, I shaved off all my hair, I gave away everything I had. I was just wanted to be totally back to that purity I'd seen,
20
in
years
the eyes
old.
of Zoe, the lady I met. It was like, I just need to go back to the beginning. I'm going to be with Earth and listen. But I couldn't hear anything. All I had was anxiety, terrible anxiety, and crushing despair. And interfused by periods of epiphanies. I always call them epiphanies. It's like I've had another epiphany. I'm back. So that sort of greater soul presence, that sort of angelic soul star being, kind of would beam in, but I couldn't hold a frequency, and I wasn't bringing it into my body or into my heart. I had no concept of that. So then I'd crash back into this abyss on the other side,
Yeah.
and so eventually, I was, really, really falling apart. I couldn't walk down a street without feeling intensely paranoid. It's like I had no skin.
Yeah.
And again, I know it's such a familiar experience for so many. And it was the splitting consciousness was so vast because everything I was conditioned to be was against what I was doing. And I hadn't yet found keys within my being, within
Yeah.
my core, that took me anywhere else. I just had this vast sort of angelic aspiration,
Turned
to be
on.
this other way. And so anyway, I met this, I came across my partner at the time recommended I saw someone eventually because I was really, really, really falling apart and barely functioning. And so I found one who was also a dragon storyteller in a magazine, so a local magazine. I thought, wow, that sounds up my street because I'd always been imaginative. It was like, okay, if she tells stories about dragons to children, she must be,
Yeah.
okay. So I went to see her, and the moment I saw her, it just changed my world again. It was like seeing Zoe in the park, but she was standing at the door framed by roses of her kind of therapy room up on the Welsh Hills, and she was just alight with her own fairy goddess beauty beaming through every cell, and I just never seen it like a person like this. It was like a revelation. It was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, I was terrified of her. I thought that was
Wow.
deeply terrifying but utterly beautiful. And she had in her waiting room all these little flyers saying priestess of Avalon training, and I thought immediately from my background, that is bonkers. There are really people who are in real time. I mean, I've read the novel, but
Oh my
they're
God.
doing it for real. And it was just an amazing process of starting to recover the memories of who I was, and that I had some core inside me with a longing and a remembrance, and remembering that one who'd sung to the stars as a child, coming back to her. And it took a good year and a half of healing to even begin to remember. But once that came back in, that root, that origin, it was like being able to build the pathways of my own curiosity, which were into the fairy. They were just straight into the fairy, the shining ones. It was like my heart was just longing everything that resonated with that frequency. It was like, that's home. I know I have to go this way. And through the terror of it, which was always terrifying, and at every threshold in some ways is just to go forward into the reality and depth of this remembrance and becoming. It was moving through that into the longing and uncovering whatever was there. And I discovered also my kind of third lucky, huge, life-saving, but obviously all choreographed in perfection at another level, was meeting a shamanic practitioner who, and I saw that she was an artist, and she was encoding in her paintings her visions, what she
Right.
saw. And she spoke of the fire child and the ancient way of the shamanic ones, who were the ones who through their visions downloaded the frequencies of those dimensions into this world, so that we can create a sacred reality,
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
bring that through here. And it made such complete sense to me. I thought, that's art, that's true literature, that's true creation, that's it just so I began training in the shamanic ways, which was what really unlocked the deeper connection, because I felt the fairy and I felt it, but it was almost still at my periphery, and like I couldn't, there was a limit to the connection. And with the shamanism, the ceremonies, the drum, the way of the drum, always for me, it's been in ceremonies on the land,
Yeah.
breaking through to that deep, deep vibrational oneness of remembrance with those dimensions, and with the stars, with the Elven and the fairy and the goddess presence within the land, with Merlin, with these, with the dragons, with this remembering. And my shamanic teacher, her main way was through this moving mandala dance of purifying the elemental bodies. That was what was, I just realized it was always through the elements, through working through the bodies of fire, earth, air, and water, purifying, bringing them back into their original frequency until the body itself can carry that soul star light from beyond.
Yeah.
And then the full timeline of remembrance being able to be carried through the body, through the heart, right here. And that's continued to be my practice, always all the drums here. But it's and for me it's like an adventure and a mystery, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful form. And when you get through the really painful parts, when the separation is so agonizing and it's so terrifying to touch the light, because it's more beautiful than you ever thought you could possibly be, and you feel
Yeah.
so unworthy. And it's just to come into that, but then becoming more and more a luminous adventure into remembrance. So
Yeah.
even the forgetfulness becomes the embrace of a wholeness
Yeah.
that is our becoming. And yeah, so the silver wheel and the elven remembrance, the silver wheel was really the remembrance restoring through my own innermost lineage, which, as I remembered, was this deep elven resonance, and timeline of lifetimes on earth, and
Wow.
in dimensions beyond, and the wisdom of how we are here, and how we return to that, which was, yeah, the silver wheel.
I never heard of the silver wheel, but that's fascinating. It's fascinating to me because, you know, in just my own knowing or whatever. I'm not saying this is the gospel truth for everybody, but like we are a universally seeded planet,
Yeah,
and there's we spend,
yeah,
we spend a lot of time naturally due to our conditioning comparing ourselves at a very at very loud
yeah,
levels, but also very subtle levels. Oh my God, she can talk to fairies, I can't. Or
yeah,
but it's amazing to me to hear these stories, and even reflected on my own listening to you, because I used to tell people back then in those first 2-3 years, I proved you can lose your effing mind and be attached to the light, and on that ride with having divine
yeah,
episodes every day, and seeing apparitions and you know, everything else that comes with it, the epiphanies and time, you know, out of time moments and all that. Yet we always get plunked back into the body, and it, you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, and you know, like you and like everybody here, people thought, you know, you're crazy. But then you go down to, I'll never forget the night I met Merlin. It was on a Lionsgate. And there was a cemetery next to my house, and I would walk there every night. It was full of like a bayou and, you know, waterways and such, animals and off-planet animals. but but I remember that night, and it was probably the first time that I had an experience where there was physical energies involved to the degree that they were, which was basically all this stuff happened. Like I had my own Lady of the Lake thing happen, you know, like this hand
Yeah.
comes out of the thing. But when I went back to the house, I heard this noise. It was after midnight, and I was walking across the courtyard, and I heard this crazy noise. And I turned around, and I heard, it's me, it's Merlin. So I look a little closer, and it was an owl in the tree. And at the time, back in the early days of Soulogy, when I wasn't even doing shows like this, I was just doing a lot of videos, and sometimes I'd rap and sing and dance, and this owl started doing that. It started dancing and singing. And then two more owls came, which I was told were his daughters. Anyway, it's like, and then you go back to, you know, the episode's over, one of many like you're talking about, and then you go back and you're supposed to lay your head on your pillow like everything's okay. Like, you know, am I the only one that knows this shit's going on? How is it for you now? Like these last 2 years would be really extraordinary, this whole COVID era, because the isolation, the self-introspection, you know, taken out of the 8 to 5 routines, kids taken out of school. I mean, there's so much awakening in the last couple of years. A lot of people that I talk to, like you, they're kind of relieved because they've known this was coming for a long time. So did you know it was coming for a long time? How do you feel about it? And what have the last 2 years been like for you?
I guess it's a knowing at the level of seeing that everything the way it's been, at the level of light already being deconstructed. I
Yeah,
mean, vanishing, just
yeah,
vanishing. You know, when the underpinnings of reality have already altered so completely, you know, it's only a matter of time before that is going to appear on the outer. So it did feel always to me at the causal level like this has already happened. We're witnessing the outplaying of
yeah,
something that has already been created, has already taken place. So to kind of try and dive in and alter that now is not the point. But to be in the continuum of the
yeah,
creational mode within ourselves that has been bringing all of this about. And it felt, I was given guidance to go online actually about 3 months before the lockdown. So to put, I think I had enough time. I'd already been migrating all of my work online. I'd been told to stop ceremonies. I'd been told there would be no more ceremonies on the earth. In order, I was, you know, holding them in Wales and in some places abroad, and they said it's done, and I saw that the arc of the ceremonies, the energy of the Elven, and all of this light that had been restoring itself had been fully gifted, and I was shown it's now going to be held in multitudes of points, not just everyone
yeah.
coming to the major nodes anymore, like
Right.
Glastonbury, like Sedona, like this, but it's going to be this light is now ignited in this multitude of smaller spots, which is us, I guess. That's our
Right.
serenity, our
Yeah.
and so each of us, literally, I guess, as you ask that, I'm just kind of putting that together, but the sense of us being locked down, as it were. But for me, as a, yeah, you know, again, as I know for so many, as someone who's um, naturally very, very reclusive, and I adore solitude. I mean, I just, you know, for it's so, you know, and so it's been in the depths of this space and this becoming. And I've loved the connection to the global community through the online work. It
Yeah.
just is to me, it's the greatest wonder. And I feel like that's been deepened and expanded immeasurably. So the kind of global network on lots of levels really amplified. So it's felt very connective to me this time.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like all the empaths are, they're like, everyone's got to stay home now. And they're like, yeah, well, like what's changed for us? So many people I talked to in that time, like, well, nothing's changed for me. I don't go anywhere anyway. But
Yeah, I know. I know
but
what you
yeah,
mean. Nothing's
and what you
changed.
said too, I think is important, because there's so many cliches. There's so many cliches out of these communities and whatever, such as everything's already happened, so just, but there is a truth to that. Like the what you're talking about, like the inner, and I know there's physical actions that have followed the energetic work, such as rituals. I'm big on rituals, just impromptu. I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to do a ritual, and somehow or another that seems to come through in your story too. But yeah, like, I mean, people, we're at a place now where you can see what you're talking about, which, for example, you're talking about essentially the deconstruction of anything that's not of this frequency that's coming into our physical experience. And it's interesting watching that stuff, like just the little chinks in the armor that aren't coming back, right? I mean, everything is just
Yeah.
seems to be imploding, and yet we're standing here going, okay, it's game time, especially these last few weeks. I don't know about you, but a lot of practitioners and people like you, particularly women, have been doing this a long time. Many of them, most of them, in anonymity. I mean, it's amazing the women I've talked to over the years that have been meeting with small groups or doing work in their remote little bedroom as the estranged family member that everyone thinks
Yeah.
is crazy, who's in there doing grid work with the dragons every night. I mean, so all of that seems to be coming full circle now. Now, one of the reasons I'm really fascinated with the elementals, I've had some experiences nowhere near like you, I'm sure. And I know that they want to be heard and they want to be seen, and they're very much a part of what's happening to this earth and to us. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you really bring to mind, even just this morning, there was this huge sense of a giant sort of stone-like dragon being. And often when I've seen the rocks, and the stones, the sense is of dragon beings and elementals who, and even lakes, bodies of water, whole landscapes that are elemental beings that have kind of, as it were, frozen into those forms during our era of density and are awakening. There's an energy of awakening and of this new cycle of light moving through, and all of those dimensions also being called to begin again, as it were. It's a sense of, I mean, certainly within the Elven line, which is the one that I feel most deeply, it's like we're being called to arrive all over again, and to hold nothing back. And that's quite scary in many ways. That's so different, because then you go through all the frequency layers of the fear, the levels of the secrecy of holding that back and so forth.
Yeah.
But um, this coherent field of remembrance of ourselves as this also is so powerful, and of being called up to be as ourselves, and that different kind of a knowing, different kind of a remembrance across dimensions. And it feels to me like many of the ways that we remember many of the elemental lineages, that we're in a time when they are going to open their memory banks, like and are, and it's just the beginning. we're of so much more, within every one of those elemental lineages and races and beings. The actual knowledge that they hold and who they really are is just, I think, going to come through like a tidal wave, it feels. Oh, I've lost your sound, Todd. I don't know. Is that just me at this end?
That's me. I'm sorry.
Oh, got
I
it.
had to
Yeah.
clear my throat and I forgot to turn it back off. Um, yeah, the yeah, because I feel like that the traditional galactics, traditional. When I say traditional, I mean like that are from out in the cosmos. Like Arcturus or Sirius or Pleiades. They're kind of like, among other things, facilitators. Like facilitators for this particular experience or whatever we want to call it, a mission or whatever. But I always say to myself and to others, well, what about the elementals? What about the inner earth? And
Yeah.
maybe it's because I resonate or that's closer in my distant past on my own path, my own lineage. But like, that old saying, it's always right in front of your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
all looking out here.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'd love to hear about it. But since I first woke up, I mean, my first visions for the first probably 2 weeks always centered around going through these tunnels in the inner earth
Yeah.
and finding my, whatever you want to call them, masters or family or whatever the case is. But yeah, it just seems like, and then if you look at it, it just, there's enough information out there today, but I mean, you can look at Robert Sepper's, the anthropologist, his work at Atlantean Gardens, or so many other things, and you can see the real evidence of everything, of the gnomes, the elves,
Yeah.
the stuff that comes through the myths that has some type of archaeological or anthropological or even etymological threads that you can actually pull together. Giants is a big
Yeah.
deal that I've noticed in my research the last few months. There's a lot more information about giants coming out that's not being censored. That we were giants 200 and 300 years ago. I mean, this is like crazy. Like off the coast of California, Catalina Island. We're talking like 1700s, 1800s. I mean, so part of what I'm excited about is what is the true history, and it's not so much what are the lies we're looking at. I don't even care. I just want to know what really
Yeah.
happened. And to think that these things were literal and something like Avalon to have the impact on us, because you don't really hear. You'll hear about Elysium, the Lion Kingdom, Avalon, which seems to be some kind of connection for me anyway. Egyptian, which seems to be some kind of connection. And of course,
Yeah.
Atlantis and Lemuria. But so what's your feeling on, because it feels to me like through your story and through your energy that you are definitely a player over in Glastonbury. I mean, I know we can get caught up in labels and all that and get lost in the ego labyrinth, but like you're like a gatekeeper or something, part of a team or something. Do you feel like there's anything specific that you're doing in collaboration with others, either consciously or not, in that area? Because it is a very special area.
Yeah. It's well, when I was told to come back here, the thing I was asked to do was to awaken the golden elven heart I mean, they spoke of Gwenwyvard, so Guinevere, um,
Gwenrevod.
and the sense of the kind of, I guess it's like it's almost like when I see it, when I feel it in my heart, it's like a white, golden, elven lineage energy, and it's part of Avalon and always has been part of her deepest layers. And it's been so beautiful. It was daunting to come back because there are so many energetically awake people and so much ceremonial work, so many layers of energy, and it was almost, I'd lived out very rurally and reclusively until that point. So to come into a center and to hold ceremony in the midst of all of this, and so many weavings, so many beautiful weavings, and every kind of weaving, and I just So just to begin, and I just remember walking with my staff, sort of holding my willow staff, holding these ceremonies, and just beginning and to feel, and it did feel year after year, the Elven citadels, the continuum of the golden Elven dimensions and citadels rising again here, and just in layer after layer, and so much lifting off during that time. And I do feel and experience it like this. It's, I guess, part of how I see is very, it's like architectures, archways rising up around, citadels, as I call them, in a very non kind of, kind of guarding against kind of a way, but just this incredible holding of divine form and architecture that is, as you say, ancient and always of earth. And that's what I've loved about the remembrance that's moved through, which is, and that is what I love about the path of remembrance too, is that it's all inside us. We are those elemental beings. We hold earth within our earth. And if we start, for me, I just pick up the drum, and it's like that drum into resonance with that heartbeat of the earth, with creation, with that pulse and that being. And a journey of remembering begins within my core. And I love that. It's like the inner path of what this is and what earth is. And she's longing for us to remember and to tell us also, so much has been gifted. So this vast timeline of ages that have been, and so much stored within the inner earth, and my remembrance, like you, very much through, I always went into the earth. That was always for me the beginning. And interestingly, I only went out to the stars from the inner earth eventually when I was ready. And my remembrance was of the Elven as coming from the stars long since. In that first wave, carrying that celestial dream of earth, which so many of the elder founder lineages, races did, coming through, as you say, such a universally seeded planet, and that there have been many of these great ages where these inner architectures, of earth at these levels, in collaboration with all of these lineages and races, have risen, and they're all still within her. It's all still encoded, and it's part of what the roots, if you like, of the tree of peace within our reality that is awakening. As you say, it is amazing what's coming in from the stars. As you say, the facilitation from the stars. I mean, I kind of tend to go back and forth. It's like, but what's coming from within the earth as she synchronizes with, again, her physicality with the higher dimensional ages that are held within her. It's just astounding. And everything we feel, as you say, about Avalon, Atlantis, Lioness, Egypt, it is all encoded within that continuum. That's when we begin touching to what this reality really is, this elemental, beyond incredible reality. And I think it's possible for any starseed at this level of frequency of what the earth truly is to feel so profoundly at home here. Because actually in her essence, when you start remembering, she is this intergalactic realm.
Right. And I think that's what's happening. I'm like, everything that's happening to us, we're following her. So she's coming into a greater understanding of herself, her powers, her beauty. I mean, it used to be everybody on this path was like, beam me up, get me the hell out of here. I'm done. But now everybody's, I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. I mean, we've come so far. And to think these things, I mean, like I was watching something the other day. And again, the stuff that's put before you, I learned a long time ago, I don't know about you, but not to take things literally, I mean, yet they never go away. Like I remember the first time I met Morgan at 3:30 in the morning on a message. And I ended up convincing her to talk to me on the phone a few hours later. And the minute I heard her voice, I heard, this is Merlin's daughter. I'm like, what? And these things just keep coming back, right? Yeah. And you don't take it literally, but they don't go away. And I saw something a couple of days ago. It was a video about Atlantis with some new information, which was basically all physical evidence, which had to do with the thought that Atlantis, which I think is pretty well proven, was in the Atlantic Ocean, in a big, elongated continental mass, and that as it sunk, the highest parts of it, obviously, like the Azores, stayed above water, but it was showing the relation to UK and to, I think, Portugal through these what are now underwater roadways, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason that all of the things that, like my friend in Hyde Park or you at Oxford or so many other things. I have friends that have gone to Glastonbury and had experiences. And, we're talking about some, I mean, when people talk about we're only seeing what? Less than X percent, and then like 3% of the visible light spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're like, what's going to happen here? I look here every night through this portal back here, and I know they're there. I've seen one elf one day getting out of my car. And of course, it was one of those things where you go, did I see that? But I can feel them. I can feel them laughing. I can feel them playing around. I may be crazy, but I mean, like, since Morgan's been gone about a year. And so obviously I'm like you, I spend all my time alone unless I'm talking to her. And things getting moved in my house, things that disappear and then reappear. And I'm like, okay, who's playing around here? Noises, and they're accelerating. And I think the other thing that's happening to me, I don't know if you mentioned the trees a while ago, but the trees seem to be, and I've always been sensitive to the trees, but they seem to be getting louder and louder.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
time. Like, to me, the trees are my church.
Yeah.
They're just like, you talk to one tree, you can talk to all the trees on the earth. It's kind of how
Yeah.
I've always approached it. But I don't know, is it getting louder for you? Do you feel like that somewhere in the near future, I'm not trying to ask a leading question, but like, do you feel like somewhere in the near future, the physical and what we call the non-physical are going to start bleeding through to each other if they haven't already?
It feels like it. It feels like it's in the process. And when you say, "Are things getting louder?" I agree with you. I mean, I just have a little garden back here,
Mm.
and with a pear tree at the heart of it, and and a flower bed, and then there's a birch tree at the back, an elder tree, a holly tree. They're just small because it's a little suburban back garden, but it just almost stops me in my tracks with the beauty. It's just getting
Yeah.
stronger. Their presences are just like almost overwhelming. It's like and I think the trees are they're bringing this through almost. They're guiding the way, and in the teachings of the silver wheel, it just says the trees are foremost. In our ascension, it's like they are foremost, and
Yeah.
we go to the trees and we can connect our cosmic purpose, our higher destiny. That's
Yeah.
what they will just bring you into, that complete alignment with that part of us that is also able to stand guardian on earth to this and become this forest, that overarches and
Yeah.
restores the ecology of interconnection so we can really I think their whole way of being is transmitting to us right now as part of who we are and the way that we're being called
Yeah.
to become and to be.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first reawoke 11 years ago, I think the first day and a half was just trees. And I didn't know because I didn't have any conscious recollection of what I could verifiably say was a dimensional experience or psychic experience or whatever. And I kept thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? Be a tree lover? And as time went on and I went homeless, I found every prayer, every appeal that I made to the universe was through the trees. Every communication that I wanted to
Yeah.
transmit to another human being, uh,
Yeah.
everything I ran through the trees. And I remember like being in New York City. I ended up in New York City, you know, because you know how we had to follow the guidance, right? You end up in New York City with like $20 in my pocket in the middle of the winter. And I remember going to find a tree because in the city you can't find any trees. And I was in the northern Bronx, and I went and found 3 trees in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. And I put up a prayer, and the next day I got somebody sent a few $100. And I'm like, this, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, this is the real deal. So I'm excited to see the the presence, acknowledged presence of those things that are close to us, rather than, and nothing against the rest of the universal family, but there's always this talk about spaceships landing and Project Blue Beam and fake alien invasions and Jesus coming down on a chariot, and whatever. And when it's right in front of us, God, the Goddess, is right in front of us.
Yes.
And not only is it there, it's a willing collaborator in the cycle of new creation.
Yeah.
And we're in the promised
That's what I
land.
loved when I was given the Elven teachings. It was like, it went very quickly from, it was speaking of the new earth and us as keystones of the new earth, and how she would gift us the initiations we needed to remember, who we were and to become those keystones. And then it went into the intergalactic origin of her own presence, but then flowed right through round. It was like, as I was gifted the teachings, they were moving through. It was like the trees, the flowers, the waters, they are the key guides now.
Right.
And I loved it when it said about the flowers. It said then no longer peripheral. If you regard them as peripheral ornamentation, they're actually central teachers of the dawn of our ascension, because they reveal what it means to live in our light, to appear in our light,
Right.
in our true form. Because we actually, in our true form, we look very similar to them. And that's, so they are major guides of the way that we are as we return, as who we are. And so it's this shift in perception, as you say, around the trees, the flowers, the waters, the rocks, the stones, the everything that is around us.
Right.
And the stones, of course, so many work with the crystals. I know that it's come to seem, it's almost, I was just saying to myself today, it was like, I can't say enough, really, in my own heart, of what the crystals have been on the path of remember, just to hold them as part of earth and to listen, and what they carry, and the record keeping, and how they can bring this all back through us just by sitting with them and holding them, is just beyond.
Yeah. And the grandfather rocks and the rock formations and the cliffs, and I mean,
yes,
it's that was another thing early in my journey, and I didn't know anything about crystals, so I picked up what people would call rocks, and they spoke to me, and I carried them with me. I mean, the things we did to get here. But I love it because we've all ended up in the same place. And what's the one thing that we've all done, no matter what? That's been, when this guidance started speaking in whatever way it did, we listened. And we were, considered crazy and all those things, but it looks like we've got some real traction in 2022.
Yeah, I think that's the word, real traction. Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious, someone with your birth of experience, how do you feel about things right now? You're one of the refreshing things in talking to you is, and nothing against this point of view, but excuse me, but a lot of people talk about, oh my God, things are horrible. We got to start saving Mother Earth. And I'm not saying that we don't have to do these things. I'm just trying to make a point here. We've spent so much time looking at the shadow and looking at what's wrong.
Yeah.
When to me, the purpose of all that was simply to wake us up. And now that we've woken up, what do we want to do? What do we want to create? How do we want to play? Because it sure seems like that's available to us now. And in the very recent past, where they're starting to, like my wife and I've seen other ladies doing it that I know, having groups that come together in kind of an open, freestyle kind of, you could say, meditative journey or dimensional journey, particularly into the new Earth grid. The power of the imagination being introduced into our life with, credibility for the first time. These magical things that all these women all over the world have been doing in their private lives, starting to be openly shared, like the old circles of the sisterhoods. You know, there's power in that. That's you know, I guess in my opinion, beneath it, the reemergence of the mother's energy, or the equalization, or bringing it into equilibrium. But yeah, are you seeing more and more people actively involved? Are you collaborating with more people? How do you think we're doing?
Yeah, so I felt like there's so many layers in that question,
I
actually.
know. It's
It
just
was
that's
like,
my.
yeah, no,
I have a
I was kind
tendency to
of
do that.
really sensing into what you were saying, and it is that sense of, right from the beginning, as it began that remembering process and receiving the silver wheel, the guidance over and over again was, not to go into trying to, patch up and heal and put together a reality that is dissolving, and but to have this gaze to what is deeply re-emergent. And that so many of us, again, it's been like you say about trusting ourselves, because that can seem so at odds with our outer senses,
Mm-hmm.
but it's such a profound inner knowing that what we're witnessing and feeling is this arising, as you say, of the invisible, moving back through and moving into creational mode. And when you were just speaking about the circles, it was like that resurrection, if you like, of that creative, golden creational mode. And through our dreaming power, through our joy, through our play, through our hearts, our imaginations, dreaming with the earth again. And it does feel like, I hear so often the animals saying, we so long for you to drop all your guilt and your fear,
Yeah.
over what you're doing to us and what you're doing to the earth, because what we really long for you to do is to remember how beautiful you are and begin to create that fragment of the earth's dream that you carry in your heart, because there's a reason you've come, not just to learn hard lessons in the physical or to remember the divine in the physical. We might always look, it's to do something so that we can then graduate and pass on, but actually it's the profoundest gift of creating here in joy, and this golden creational mode that, as you say, as we go through that awakening and come more deeply into who we are, that it's kind of our natural way. And with the Elven, I feel it's like sometimes like a remembrance. I can feel it in my hands of what it felt to dream as nature does, to create as nature does, like a flower arising from the palm of your hand.
Right. Right.
To create in that way. And I think you feel that. You can feel that right now. It's like that golden liquid creational energy moving through you and creating as love does, creating as nature does, the earth creating herself as us, moving through. And I do think that's the most, the most profound gift we can give her, is to move into that space with the part of her dream that we carry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the universe is. I am not complete without the universe. The universe is not complete without me. And I love the. I was going to say the metaphor, but the literal metaphor of we look like the flowers. I mean, I get that energetically. I mean, like everyone is aware and accepting of their role, except for us. We're just figuring it out now. It's not like you said. I love the way you explained it, because we don't have to go clean up the place, because that's not even real. It's like we don't have to resort to. It'd be like trying to rebuild let's just say, the apparatuses of the matrix that are deconstructing, such as financial or energy or educational. Why would you go reconstruct something? We don't even live in that world. We actually live in this place where we can say, like, bewitch, and we, wiggle our nose and create something. This is like, what it's made me feel like over the last, I'd say certainly since the 22nd of February, but something really seemed to do something crazy last month, and it's carried over into this month.
Yeah.
And it's the it's the, I don't know how to explain this, but like it's the, I don't have to go anywhere by my old levels of comprehension. Like I don't have to get on a plane and fly to Australia to see Morgan or many other things. I can actually access everything right here. And a big transmission or I guess whatever you want to call it has been coming over the last few weeks is notice everything around you, examine everything to the fullest. It's all alive. It doesn't matter if it's a table or a chair or a tree or whatever. And there's some type of access there, or maybe there's more awareness with me. And this is where the portals are. This is how you travel. This is how you very much like what we're doing now. You mentioned the internet earlier and how it's such a benefit. It's the highest physical manifestation of the ethers. This is actually our thoughts in form. So what's next?
Yeah.
We're sitting side by side having a conversation instead of two cameras, right? I mean, it seems to be right there. And what I love about what's happening, I see it two ways. One is more and more people are acknowledging this imaginary world, the magical, the alchemical possibilities and such. And the other thing I'm noticing too is people are less triggered or charged or affected by all of these stories, these false flag frequency projections or whatever they may be, which is a very good sign to me.
Yeah, that's true as you say that. That's absolutely true. And I think of how it is appearing. And also, when you just described that about the table and the chair, I just got the strongest sense. It's like, when we get those impulses, those gestures, like to move something here or there, like you said, how the importance of
Right.
ritual, but it just being in that moment where you don't know what to do, but you do something that's from beyond trying to do anything. And it's like those gestures from that place that if we were just in a sort of disembodied state, we might say, I can just think it doesn't matter. But this is part of the
Yeah.
magic of dancing with earth, with the joy that we are actually here in form. So to move that stone from there to there to whatever those gestures, they can
Yeah.
seem so small, but they're so significant because there are the building blocks, the form, the portals,
That's right.
formation, and each of us holding these dimensions, which are immense. As
Yeah,
you say,
I'm
there might
with
be
you on
small
that.
rooms here and there, but they're
I'm
huge.
totally with you on that. I think about it this way. Like, I know that we're influencing, I have to speak for my own. I know I'm influencing timelines and dimensions ad infinitum, right? I mean, and to think that the way I conduct myself as a human being, as a conscious human being, in the mundane, I'm going to go down to the store, I'm going to get a cup of coffee, I'm going to have an exchange with the clerk or a couple of people standing in line. The little things aren't little.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I believe the connectivity, why would it be any different? I mean, it affects every one of my simulations or alternative lives or past. I mean, we actually have the ability to go in and rectify and bring alignment to things that have occurred or that will occur. I mean, these possibilities that we have are just absolutely mind-blowing. And I think
yes,
for as much progress as has been verifiably made in the last 10 years on or about 2012, I mean, we're just dipping our little toe into the water,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
amazing, which is absolutely amazing.
I found myself, it was just came in so strongly yesterday, and I don't think it just felt as though it was just the words. I just found myself saying it out loud, but it was like ascension hasn't become part of the collective narrative yet, but it just feels only a matter of time. Like there's a kind of threshold. I just thought, oh my gosh, and it felt. So I thought, how will that be when, as you say, it's not just the black sheep and the crazies anymore. It's not this
Mm-mm.
peripheral, but becomes part of the collective narrative, and it does feel that possibility is at
Yeah.
some kind of threshold. I feel like there is this tidal wave of collective awakening, absolutely, that sort of turn. It's at a turn point,
Yeah.
and this receiving of this kind of shift point from the narrative of, beginning to discover, those extra dimensional senses, beginning to discover guides and so forth, and this remember, this I am presence of the self, and this stream of frequency we're experiencing, just an amazing thought to just feel. But it feels to me like it's something coming into a much broader, vaster tidal wave of collective feeling, thinking, feeling.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
yeah,
I agree, and there's a lot of talk over the years about there's going to be a time when we're put to work. Like, you could say it another way, like the things are going to happen and we need to be pillars or columns of light. And I think about that. I always think about how is it going to look at the human level? Like through these eyes, how's it going to look? Knowing that these eyes have seen a
yeah,
12-foot angel or other apparitions that took physical or solid form to some extent or another, how's that going to look? You know what I mean? And I think to myself, maybe what it is as the other kingdoms and other things beyond the current visible light spectrum come into our five sensory experience, that we are just not going to be in disbelief or in doubt. We're going to be accepting, and that alone, because I really resonate strongly with what you said about the human physical actions. Like there's something about me moving that stone from here to there that I guess engages and activates and actualizes this what we're talking about, because one thing seems to be certain: the way it grows is by how much we use it. If we don't use it, we say, "Oh, Merlin was born back then, and I know I was connected to him," and But if you say, which is why he's sitting right there, but
yeah,
hey, Merlin, I handle things on my own, but I'm in a deep place right now, and I need some help. And you connect with that essence, or even another person like you, which is what we're doing now. I mean, these things that have been suppressed, I guess, would be the way you put it. Are just like the elementals in the trees, just waiting to be recognized and utilized.
Yeah, and when you did that gesture of the stone to the stone, it was like I just felt it's how your 12-foot angelic DNA gets activated in that moment. Then, kaboom, And the thing is, we are already seeing each other that way, aren't we?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
that's how you appeared before our call. It's like
yeah,
the sense of this, who I'm meeting with, who I'm communicating
yeah.
with, and we're becoming, and that's a magical experience. And I'm receiving that from others, people who see you, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is, so it is, it's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an amazing thing, and it is this, we use the word so much, but this multi-dimensionality, and I love that play between the different layers. I love going, because I think all the layers of who we are, in this sort of play of manifestation, are so fantastic, and my understanding of it is to sort of let them freely move.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all the magnificence and grandeur and solemnity of this vast consciousness at times, and it plays through different layers, and then there's just total kind of the joyful foolishness of not knowing anything at all, and just right here, right now, moving in those small moments, and but it seems to have this beautiful choreography and the wholeness of consciousness moving back and forth
Mm-hmm.
between these layers of who we are. And I love that sense of surrendering into that. And I just saw a couple of your recordings from before this, and I love the way you held the interviews, because it feels like that,
Mm-hmm.
like this free movement between the
Mm-hmm.
aspects, and not, yeah. And I
Yeah.
just think that's magical. And then we're kind of simultaneously visible in all of them. It's all
Yeah.
there.
It's like right there, but you can't put your finger on
Yeah,
it.
you
Wait a
can't put
minute.
your finger on it.
But I think what you said too, like, we all have our callings and everything. And again, it's like, if you use the analogy of so many people are getting moved. So like I'm getting moved right now, and I'm what
Yeah.
20 days away. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
And then not because I can't get the resources together. If I needed to, I could ask the community or whatever, to go get another place. Or it's not about that. It's about they haven't told me yet. It hasn't appeared
Yeah.
yet. And I'm not sitting here freaking out about it today. But yeah, there's just something about something that's gone on this year, specifically the last couple of months, where the field is different. There's less judgment, less projection, less self judgment, and more of what you're talking about, which is that I call it surrendering beyond love, which is I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
It's bigger than me. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna align with it. I know I'm a powerful creator, co-creator, whatever, but I'm still in this dance with everything external of me. There's something amazing happening, and I don't have to know everything anymore. It's like
Yeah.
I can't. It's coming in too fast anyway.
Yeah.
So,
And it's
you,
funny, I find if I try and stop the cycle anywhere, like the need to move between those different aspects of life and so forth, then it breaks down. If I think, oh, I need to sit here, so it's my
yeah,
little room where I do my
yeah,
translations, I have to sit in meditation for
yeah.
4 hours,
That's
which
right.
sometimes I go into that spin where I think that's what I should be doing. And like really, full depth surrender to this space. But actually how the energy nearly always moves is like back and forth. It's just as important. Clean the house,
Yeah,
do the food shopping,
yeah,
and this movement back, and of course on a practical level it's important, but it just feels the energetics of, as you say, like almost like the small things are opening even more deeply as the
yeah,
immensity is opening even more deeply, like, and they're kind of the direct mirror of each other. The more the small things, and you can feel this power in the, like, just like hoovering or something. It's like way beyond
yeah.
what,
It's
what
it's
what it
that
might have seemed to be
that
before.
universal paradox too. Like you're right. And it's the little things that are the big things, and the big things that are the little things. And I get
Yeah.
told that a lot over the years with Soulogy. Like we purposely designed it to stay under the radar. So you got, a few different platforms, and that served us during the period of censorship, and we didn't get hit too bad too often.
Yeah.
But there's something else to that. And that is what you think is big is not having the impact that you might think, and what little
Yeah.
things that you do has a huge impact, such as two people hanging out and sending the best of intentions to the heart of the earth, or so many other things we think are, oh, that's just whatever, but it's not. I mean, it
Yeah.
is. I mean, look at the power of the mother's prayer. Like, I don't know of anything on the earth that has a human being, a physical, 100%, flesh, blood, and bones. I mean, than a mother's prayer. That's like the most powerful force that you can have,
Yeah.
and that's what's coming to the surface in all of us. I didn't mean to keep you so late. I didn't realize an hour and 20 minutes went by so fast, but
I just noticed the time for the first time a
well,
second
I was
ago.
going to ask you, I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you mentioned drums, and I'm big into all that stuff. So I don't know if there's something you want to do before we get out of here, and I'd love to talk to you later in the year if you're open to it, because we could dive a lot deeper. I think people need to see people like you. But yeah, did you want to play the drum, or, do a dance or sing or anything?
I'll tell you what, I would have loved to drum. I think I probably need to go now because, speaking of the kids, my
Oh,
son
oh, you
is
have kid.
back
Oh,
now. So
wow. I would love to
yeah,
talk about that too. No, no, don't play
he's
the
been
drum.
out this evening, but I would have loved to share that, and maybe another time. It would be
Yeah, we'll do
magical.
that. We'll do that, and we'll dig into
Yeah,
how many kids do you have at the house?
I've got two sons,
How old are they?
12 and nearly 8.
Ah, well, that's a
Yeah.
whole other aspect of ascension right there. So,
Yeah.
wow. So we'll get together again, and Morgan just said thank you, Melina, for bringing Ellen to Soulogy. Yeah, and we're really thankful of that. Melina's pretty connected to Merlin as well, as is Morgan. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
pleasure meeting you. All blessings to you and your family. Thank you for coming in today and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. And I'd love to dig in deeper later in the year if you're open to it.
That would be magic. Yeah,
Talk
I'd
about
love
the
that
phase
too.
and the elementals and the 8 and 12-year-old boys in the middle of an ascension. These kids are coming up with crazy stuff. But you take care. I didn't mean to keep you too late. Thank you so much.
Uh,
Thank you for
yeah,
everything that
so
you're
much
doing.
love.
See you later.